Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to have a discussion today about where I think Kuro Games really messed up when it comes to this anniversary. And the main page that we're going to be looking at over here to address this mess up is of course going to be the Bountiful Waves page. You might recognize the UI over here from last anniversary, where this is essentially a rerun of the Gilded Night Market with a bit of a different skin going on, where, you know, you're able to get things like poles, tuners, tubes, weekly boss mat materials as well. And the way that you get them and unlock them, right, is by collecting spindrifts, where a majority of the tasks over here are going to involve, you know, just completing some of the anniversary events in the patch. But the main way that you're going to be getting the spindrifts is, of course, through pulling on the character banner and, of course, on the weapon banner. And I think the realization that most people have had is that as long as you pull about, I would say, a total of maybe like 100 something times in the patch, you should be able to get those 3,000 spindrifts required, easily be able to get the 2,200, right, to be able to unlock the Radiant Tides. But for the 3,000, you're going to have to pull about 160 times on both or 160 times total, and you should be able to get things like the Hiyuki cosmetic over here, which, I'm going to be honest, it doesn't actually fit her character that well, but get it if you want it. And, naturally, the Denya doll, too. That's going to be available. I don't even know where it is. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, it shows up right there under character. However, the main topic that we're going to be focusing on over here isn't like the rebate that you get for these or even like these, but it's going to be this item over here on the right. The 2 transducers that are going to be available in the shop for 600 spindrifts each, but they're only unlocked when you reach 5,000. You can probably guess what's going on over here. For example, if I go ahead and I pull 10 more times on the character banner, which I will be doing for Denya, or maybe 20 more times over here, I'll get an additional 500 spindrifts. Same thing with the weapon. 30 more times over here, I'm going to get 500. That would bring my total that you see at the bottom over here up to 3,000 with no issue at all. And for this 2,200, right, just for the pulls, I just need to do a couple of these events, which I can very, very, very easily do. To get to 5,000, on the other hand, I am 1,000% going to need to get to maybe like 120 pulls over here, maybe 160. Same on this weapon banner. What I'm basically leading us up to over here is that unless you're going to pull like 300, maybe even more times in this patch, you have no way of even unlocking these transducers from the store, because 5,000 spindrifts is an absolutely unholy amount. You can probably see what's happening over here. Kuro has basically made it so that these substat rerollers, right, the things that you use to be able to re-roll your echoes, you know, with you spending more and more, the more stats that you lock, or the more stats that you lock while re-rolling, it's essentially become just a paid resource. And I think that on an anniversary where we should be, you know, in a bit more of like a celebratory mood, that sort of thing, locking off the resource like this that people find very, very, very valuable for like perfecting their builds, so on and so forth, you know, really enhancing their echoes to be the best that they can possibly be, I don't really think that's the right move to make. Because unironically, it's harder to get spindrifts in this patch than it was in the patch that they were introduced, version 3.1. I've actually got the details over here for how you can even get spindrifts in the first place. So first things first, right? You can get them from purchasing them in the store. You spend 30 Afterglow Corals and you can get up to 2 transducers. So spending 60 of your Afterglow Corals, which is kind of expensive because that's like 1/6 of a character's sequence node. And then naturally, after those discounted first 2, you got to spend 60. So 6 transducers was basically equal to a character dupe. Kind of goddamn expensive. So the main way to acquire them without any special events or any special deals or anything is essentially pulling so much that you have all these resources and you can whale. But there were some other ways to actually acquire these back in version 3.1. First and foremost was the weekly subscription, where this was possibly the best deal in Wuthering Waves history. You would pay like 10 bucks and then get the equivalent of like a whole 10 pull and then like 680 Lunite on top of it, as well as a transducer. Kuro Games. My take basically is, why did we not have a rerun of the weekly subscription during the anniversary? This would have naturally kept transducers as a bit more of like a premium resource, but I don't know any paying player who didn't decide to pick one of these up because the value in them was absolutely fucking insane. Yes, you had to wait like 15 days, right, to be able to, you had to wait like 15 days total, to be able to actually get all of this stuff, but it's the anniversary patch with a shit ton of content to do. I don't think that was a concern for anybody. And then on top of getting so many pulls and so much premium resource, you would get a transducer as well. I don't think a lot of people complained about the implementation of this bad boy, and I think a lot of people would have been happy to see it back again. The other way that you would get transducers in 3.1 update was, of course, the spending event, right? Where you had to go ahead, the weekly subscription would actually contribute to that spending event, by the way. You would have to go ahead, get a pretty significant amount of money spent. I think it was around like $30-$40 maybe. And then you would get 3 transducers right off the rip there. And then when you got to like the free 5-star, the Shorekeeper, Camellia, or Jancy, you'd be able to trade one of them for 8 transducers. So there was 11 possible transducers over here, and of course one over here for 12 total from some of the events in the update. This one over here is like it. I am 99% sure there's no other sources of transducers in this patch other than the Afterglow Coral Shop. Kuro Games. This is Wuthering Waves' anniversary. The only way to get these transducers over here is to pull an unholy number of times on the character banners, but then you kind of did this on top of it. Let's just give the entire player base a little bit of PTSD over here. You've got to pull an unholy amount on the banners, but guess what? We don't even have the anniversary banners like we did last year. So you've got to pull a shit ton of times, but then you go into the actual convene menu and there's not that many characters to even pull in the first place. And God forbid you're somebody like me, where the max that you typically go for, right, is the character and then their weapon, and then you don't really go for like sequence nodes or additional copies or refinements of the weapon. Bro, I'm basically being told, hey, Saint, if you want these spindrifts and you want to buy these transducers from the shop, well, get ready to pull dupes. I feel like this doesn't make any sense at all. Because even if you're a paying player who wants to spend money on the game, who wants to pull a lot of things, you're basically being told, hey, you have to start going for dupes or you're not getting these at all. I would have preferred if there was just like some sort of package, right? Like what we had before, some sort of package like the weekly subscription, or God forbid, right? Even like another spending event or something like that to get these transducers. But in the current state, where you basically only have one option, and that's to pull a shit ton of fucking times, I feel like this is one of the dumbest moves they might have ever made before. Because once again, there's nothing to pull on in this update other than the 2 new characters. And then 4 other reruns. Maybe we could have had like 5 reruns. I don't know, 6 reruns, 7, something like that. Or just the anniversary banners back. But this just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Because what if somebody actually did want to whale? They actually did want to get a character to S6. Well, great. The character that they might have wanted to get to S6, it's not even available. And that just goes against, right, the entire implementation of the transducers over here. And I think it's a huge miss from Kuro Games. Because when you're supposed to pull like 200, 300 times to get these, and you're not giving players a bunch of options on what to actually pull on, you know, characters that they might actually want, well, then the shit is cooked. I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people out there, especially after the 3.3 story where we got to see Imith pop off once again, that would have been like, shit, I'm down to get an S6 Imith. I'm down to R5 her weapon. I'm down to do all of that. And then they would unlock the transducers this way. Great. She's not on banner. So essentially, your only options are, hey, do you want to S6 your Yuno? Maybe there are going to be some people that want to do that. Do you want to S6 your Hiyuki? I'm sure there are plenty of people that want to do that. But unless you're somebody that wants to pull multiple dupes over here of this very limited selection of units that we're going to be having, I'm pretty sure it's Frolova, Denya, as well as Chisa in the next patch. Well, you're going to want to have to S6 one of those units or something like that too, or get multiple copies of them. Otherwise, you're just shit out of luck when it comes to those transducer resources. And to me, when they were making it much easier to access before in premium or in previous versions of the game, this has got to be one of the dumbest implementations I've ever seen. However, there is a silver lining, right? There is a silver lining to this. These transducers are technically very acquirable for a free-to-play. You would just have to be somebody that's willing to pull a shit ton of times on any of the units that we have available. And if that is the case, then I guess, yes, right? You would be eligible to get these for free in a way that we haven't been able to really get them for free before. But I think it would have just made a bit more sense if these were either A, accessible earlier on, not needing 5,000, maybe only needing like 3,500 or something like that, or God forbid, only like 3,000. I don't think that that would have been that big of a deal, because you're only giving us the chance to buy fucking 2 of them anyways. We're not really breaking the bank over here when it comes to this stuff. I kind of just had a very rude awakening, right, when I heard that transducers were available, but this is the only way to acquire them, because my pulling plans are very, very, very simple. Pull Denya, so I'll probably get this back up to like 180 maybe even 240, and then pull Denya's weapon. I don't think I'm going to get enough spindrifts to reach 5,000. And that's going to be a fair number of players as well, even for spenders. And if spenders, casual ones, maybe even like more than casual, kind of like professional spenders, are going to go ahead and not even be able to acquire this, it just feels dumb. It just feels stupid, and it feels like it wasn't really thought out that well. When you were a casual spender in the last update, getting at least like 4 of these wasn't that much of an issue at all. And this was just a 3.1 update. This isn't the anniversary. Why is it harder to get these on the anniversary than it is in a 3.1 patch? That's a question that I feel like everybody in the player base should be having. And I sincerely hope, right, that Kuro Games, with some sort of like either apology or some sort of address to these, makes these a lot more available. At least through like packages in the store, or maybe like, you know, maybe like 1 or 2 available for free to plays when the 3.4 patch comes around. Because as we all know, the 3.4 patch, or really the 0.4 patch, X.4 patch, is one of the biggest ones in the history of the game. Last update, we got fucking Septimont, and that was absurd, right? And of course, a lot of people think the Cyberpunk collab is going to be in 3.4. This following version. And so I hope that they address this. I hope that this is something that's top of mind for them, because I feel like these rewards for a majority of players, this one over here, it might as well not exist. And that's a very rough sort of experience, or a rough wake-up call, I think, for a lot of players, when they might have been expecting, you know, at least 1 or 2 of these during the anniversary. Most of you guys are going to get 0. And I think that's, frankly, a bit of bullshit. That's just my personal take over here when it comes to transducers. You're naturally free to disagree, but then I feel like you would just be wrong. I feel like we're in the majority opinion over here. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.